Hi, this is Information Man. Now you're probably wondering, what the hell am I doing holding this knife in my hand? That's precisely what I've asked myself. But with that said, right now there's a serious issue going on in the UK. And I've did one video about that called their crime is going up very high there. They've got people being stabbed with knives. And it's what they call a knife war or a knife crime. And I just may have to carry something like this myself if I was living in the UK. Okay? I'm very concerned about this. I've been studying up on it because, being an African American, I'm concerned about black folks in the global world. And they got a lot of black folks out there, and specifically in southern, I think it's South London. Okay, South London, you have a large number of black folks that live there, and you got black folks that are being affected by this crime, this knife crime. And you got youth toting knives just like this, okay? Let's see how long this knife is I've got in my hand right now. They've got some youth out there that are carrying knives that are longer than that, right? Like this much longer, okay? Like it there. I mean, it's very Jack the Ripper what's going on out there, okay? I'm going to show you a clip. You're going to see a news report. You're going to see an actual program about people who have been stabbed in London, England, the UK. Keep this in mind. There's a newspaper called The Guardian, and they're basically saying, the politicians in London or England, the UK, they're very focused on the youth, on arresting the kids, the youth. They're the blame, but the youth are just the pawns that are being used in this game. The Guardian newspaper or article talks about how the focus should really be on the men in the suits and the top hats. These are the gangsters. These are the criminality, the organized crime in London who controls everything. And they simply use the youth to enforce what they want to happen, to enforce their power on the streets. And this is all around the drug trade. You've got youth that are out there stabbing each other, attacking people over the drug trade. Who's going to control it? Because London is becoming fastly, if not the #1 cocaine capital in Europe, from what I'm reading, from what I'm studying. So they got some serious problems there. I think it's relevant to us in America, especially as black people, because we have seen how crime has affected us in our communities, particularly socially lower economic communities. You've got the drugs that are pretty much what fuse the criminality. The drugs is what fuels the violence. People who use the drugs, people that are under the influence when they commit crime. The drug trade, the gangs are pretty much used as pawns. And these kids over here in London are being used as pawns. Now, it's just not black kids that are engaging in this activity. Now, a lot of the programs that I looked at, that I did some research on, you can tell that it's black kids that are involved in this, but you also got white kids involved in this. You got all races of kids involved in this. And then you've got quite a few street gangs in the UK and in London. Black street gangs, white street gangs. So this cuts the color line, okay? You've got all different races of people involved in this. The thing that's a shame is that you've got innocent people over there that are being victims of this type of crime because they're being stabbed with knives, okay? In parks, they're being stabbed when they're trying to they're being robbed for their cell phones. They're being robbed for their personal belongings with knives. Like I said, it's very Jack the Ripper-like. It's very, it's crazy. So, and don't think that this sort of behavior and crime just cannot happen here in America, and that America hasn't had this type of crime. I know in the 60s and 70s, when gangs were really rising, when gangs during that time, they were using knives, okay? We all saw the movie, what's that, Gangs of New York. And what were they using? They were using knives, okay? So this is really a throwback, what's going on over there in London. I don't know if I would want to ever visit there anytime soon while they got this going on, because I think as a tourist, you're at risk. And like I said, if I had a child, I would wonder if my child would have to carry something like that. Now, in America, we've got problems with guns. But it looks like right now in the UK, they've got problem with knives. Now, this knife should be used, I think, primarily to prepare a beautiful meal. A steak, chop up some potatoes and corn and what have you and make a nice meal. Instead of it being used as a nice, preparing a nice meal in London right now, England, London, the UK, this is being used to actually stab and hurt people. So check out the clip that I have on there. I hope it opened up one's mind. I hope it's revealing. It's crazy. Knife wars, knife crimes in the UK.
There's been no let-up in the spate of violent crime in the capital, with another 6 teenagers stabbed. Earlier on Thursday, a 15-year-old boy was found stabbed in East India Dock Road in Poplar. That's in the east of the city. 3 teenagers were taken to hospital following an attack in Grove Road, Mile End. That's just after 6 o'clock. Another male teenager is taken to hospital after being stabbed in Ealing Broadway just after 7. A 13-year-old boy was attacked in Gainsborough Avenue near Little Ilford Park. So really, a dreadful list of events has happened over the last 24 hours. Enda Brady is here for us. This just seems to be adding to this problem, which we've been talking about over the last few weeks now. What is going so wrong here?
We simply don't know. There are many factors. The Metropolitan Police are extremely busy, we know that much. They've now got 5 separate crime scenes on top of all of the other events of the past few weeks that they're investigating, more than 50 murder investigations. Now last night, separate stabbings, none of these are linked. East India Docks, 5:30, 15-year-old boy stabbed there. He's in hospital. We don't know his condition this morning. No arrest there. Newham, very serious incident there. A boy of 13 seriously injured in a stabbing. 3 arrests, all on suspicion of grievous bodily harm. And he is in a serious but stable condition this morning. And then Ealing, about 7 p.m. last night, Ealing Broadway, teenager stabbed there. He's in hospital. And Mile End, a very serious incident there. 2 15-year-old boys, serious but stable this morning in hospital. 2 arrests. One is a man arrested on suspicion of attempted murder. The other, a boy of 16. And then late last night, after 10 p.m, Herne Hill in South London, a man was stabbed there as well. And we saw some protests in Hackney in East London last night. A group got together, they called themselves Guiding a New Generation, and people just taking to the streets and standing in silence in the centre of Hackney, just urging young people to put down the knives and to change this culture.
Okay.
Chasing suspects, Windsor Grove. Now detain Windsor Grove. Have a dog van on the hurry up, please.
We've got young people who are more willing now to carry knives and think they're justifying it.
A broken knife. Why you got that in your car?
For the vast majority of young people, there isn't a relationship with the police. There's a lack of trust in the police.
You have got a knife on you, so let's not argue about it anymore, right?
Where I come from, it's normal to hear that someone's died, sadly enough, from a knife. So it's an epidemic.
I got a call from my mother, and my mum just said, Lewis is on the floor, he's not moving, he's dead.
In South London, these specialist anti-gang unit officers are responding to an incident involving a knife.
All I know is there's a male being chased with a knife. That's his car there.
A colleague has called for urgent assistance. The officer is struggling with 2 men who may be linked to the knife incident. Another suspect has run off.
You're being detained for personal search as well. Put your hands in front of you. For weapons.
I know my rights.
Believing there's a possibility the 2 might have a weapon, the officers are taking no chances. But one of the men is determined not to be handcuffed.
What you get? Your choice. Your choice. Your choice. Stop. Gas, deploy. Gas, deploy. Right, buddy. Every chance. Right. Hold on, stand by. CS, relax. It's sprayed with CS spray.
This is a pretty violent end to what should have been a routine stop and search.
You're breathing regular and you are under caution. Bro, I should spit in your face, you You're not spitting. If you're going to start threatening to spit, that's not how it's going to happen.
The arresting officer is clear it's a situation that escalated because of the reaction of the man he stopped.
Straight away, he's been telling me to F off and whatnot, and then he started to push me. And as morning youths have arrived, he's still not complied. I've threatened him with CS spray. He's still not complied, and that's unfortunately it's got to that stage where it's escalated just for the sake of a stop and search, just to find out about the knife.
After questioning, this man was ruled out as a suspect in the knife incident and released. Police say he'd never have been arrested in the first place, had he simply been willing to speak to them. Across the UK, violence, including knife crime, is on the rise. But it's the capital where the problem is most acute, with almost 4,500 knife-related incidents last year. Already this year, 30 people have been stabbed to death.
We have a lot of information that is indicating to us that it's almost become a trend. We're doing a lot of research at the moment in order to try and make sense of what the statistics and what the qualitative data and information is actually telling us in order to come back with a feasible plan that can have a long-term impact. It may be generational, it's not going to be a quick fix. We are primarily an enforcement agency, and enforcement is what we do, but by working cohesively with our communities, with education and health and other non-statutory and statutory organisations, that will be the way forward.
Officers in Notting Hill have stopped a man they say is a known gang member. He was stabbed last year, and police intelligence reports say he now regularly carries a weapon.
We're actively targeting what we call habitual knife carriers, and that will be using an Achilles heel approach, any kind of crime that they might have been involved in order to get them off the streets, in order to seize their weapons, and that is proving to be very effective under the banner of Operation Sceptre.
Police found nothing during this search, but just 2 days later, the man was stopped again. Officers say they found him carrying a loaded handgun. He's now in custody.
I'll punch him in your face now. Are you dumb?
As government, police and community leaders search for ways to combat knife crime, the human toll continues to grow. It's a year since 20-year-old Lewis Elwin was stabbed to death in South London, a murder which is still unsolved.
The day I heard about it, I got a call from my brother. I was literally in Notting Hill, and I was driving my van. It was towards the end of the afternoon, maybe about 4 o'clock, and I got a call from Byron saying, Lewis is dead. Yeah. And my whole body just went numb. It's frightening knowing someone could commit such an offence, such an act of violence, but yet no one's been caught. No. And this is just in one case. These cases are popping up everywhere nowadays.
In Kensington, officers are responding to reports a man has threatened a group of people with a knife in a nearby park. They've stopped this man, who's admitted being involved in an argument with the group. But officers told me he denies he threatened them with a knife. Police believe the weapon may have been dumped elsewhere, but searches failed to find anything. Across the capital, though, the latest drive against knife violence has taken hundreds of weapons off the streets. Here at Scotland Yard, they've gathered together around 100 knives for us. These are just a small fraction of the weapons that have been seized in recent weeks. And they range, well, just from ordinary kitchen knives to some more decorative weapons. But police say there can be no excuse, no legitimate excuse for carrying any of these weapons on the streets. It's the early hours of the morning in South London, and the Lambeth Gang Unit have stopped to speak to this man who was sitting in his parked car on a quiet street. He's insisting he's done nothing wrong and that he's being targeted because of the colour of his skin.
This is racism,
Okay.
That is awful. That's actually racism,
No worries.
Alright,
you've got a feeling you shouldn't have to.
I don't have nothing on me, like.
It's a broken knife. Why you got that in your car?
Alright, I went to a picnic. Sorry about that.
You went to a picnic and you got it in your door?
The man is still insisting this stop and search is racially motivated.
Funnily enough, people have knives on them, and you have got a knife on you.
Alright.
So let's not argue about it anymore, eh?
Alright.
Scotland Yard commanders are more than aware of the sensitivities around stop and search, but they believe it is a valuable tactic. In some knife crime hotspots, it will be increased.
Stop and search is working well in London. It is on a reduction overall, but there are certain boroughs where it is used more effectively, and there needs to be more of it in order to deal with the issue that they're facing around knife crime in particular. But look, stop and search is not the only response.
Temi Moali runs a project in North London helping provide opportunities for young people. She believes stop and search is ultimately counterproductive.
It is an intergenerational issue. Stop and search didn't just pop up 5 years ago. This has been an issue for particular communities, especially the black community, for decades. And so we can't take it out of context. A police officer may say that they're not intentionally stopping young black people, but this is the context that we've got. This is the history that we've got. It cannot be detached from that.
This is similar to what they do in New York with the stop and frisk law that was illegal, and they eventually got rid of it in New York. They would stop young black people looking for drugs and guns on them, when in fact statistically they found out that more white boys walking around in New York had guns and drugs on them, not black males.
In Brixton, this boxing gym is one place where youngsters and the police interact in a very positive way. Off-duty officers, among those acting as coaches, also offering advice and guidance.
The reason I actually came to this place is because of a knife crime. My head teacher from my school found it out, and then so the police took it off me, and then they did the interview, and then they told me instead of doing all of the trouble with knife crime, come to the gym and do boxing. So I thought, hey, I would give it a try, and then I came and I enjoyed it, and I've been coming along ever since.
Isaac is one of the volunteers at the gym, a project set up in memory of his friend Dwayne Simpson, one of many victims of knife crime in this part of South London.
I know probably about 20 people that's been stabbed. Like, from my estate alone, at least 7 of them's been taken away. I think it's fashion, to be fair. Majority of them, I'll say 8 out of 10 of them do it out of fear. They don't really need to walk around with a knife. Like when I was growing up, you won't even think of walking around with a knife because you won't really need it.
Lewis Elwyn's brothers are also now actively involved in helping steer youngsters away from knife crime.
They need role models, and not just movie stars and athletes. They need practical role models. Whether you're black, white, orange, grey, there's positive people out there that can help share their story and experience with you so that you don't have to make those kind of decisions that can affect your future.
Ultimately, tackling knife crime will be as much a community effort as it is a policing one.
Chasing suspects, Windsor Grove.
But while people continue to fall victim to knife crime, the police make no apologies for going after those they suspect of carrying weapons.
Male detained, Windsor Grove. We have a dog van on the hurry up, please.
More than 300 knives have been taken off London's streets in recent weeks, many seized in stop and search operations. It remains a controversial tactic, but one police believe is vital in helping combat the shocking rise in knife attacks.
It is a fact that people who carry knives are more likely to have them used on them themselves.
No blade. It's a knife. It would normally have a Stanley blade in it.
So towards, I think, Camberwell direction by the sounds of it.
I think it's time that people wake up to this and save adults from burying kids, whereas the norm is kids to bury the adults. But now it's just, everything says backwards.